All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're putting on our detective hats and heading out into the field. We are tracking down the absolute perfect, exact moment trees are ready to pass their legacy on to the next generation. We often talk about going out to collect seeds, but in reality, we're usually collecting the fruits with those seeds safely tucked away inside. And figuring out that perfect moment to harvest them, well, it's a literal ticking clock, and we've really got to learn how to read the clues the forest is giving us. So, let's start with a pretty massive mystery. What actually happens if you pull a seed from a tree before it's truly ready? I mean, you might think, hey, a few days early, what's the big deal? But the consequences for that seed's survival are literally dire. We're dealing with living organisms here. Interrupting their natural development cycle prematurely is a critical error. If you jump the gun, you end up with an immature seed. The inside of it is often milky, and it functions a lot like a premature baby. It has a terribly small chance of surviving out there in the real world. But on the flip side, a mature seed is firm, it's fully developed, and it's biologically prepped to either germinate or get dispersed. If we collect too early, the seed dies. But if we collect too late, we risk losing it to natural deterioration, or worse, the hungry forest animals just beat us to the punch. Moving on to Section 1. The seed maturation window. We are basically hunting for this incredibly specific window of opportunity. The absolute key here is that we have to train ourselves to spot the physical clues the mother tree is throwing out when it's finally time to let go. We're not just out there guessing, we are looking for hard biological signals. We need to verify that the seeds are developed enough to germinate, which, not surprisingly, aligns perfectly with when the tree naturally wants them to be dispersed anyway. Which brings us to Section 2, testing attachment strengths. Now, our very first physical clue is a simple hands-on test you can do right out there in the field, assuming you can actually reach the branches, of course. It's all about feeling how strongly the seed or fruit is clinging to the tree. To really get what's happening here, we have to zoom into a microscopic level. When a seed matures, the plant forms what's called an abscission layer, right at the site of detachment. It deliberately creates this delicate structural weakness. The connecting tissue literally dries out and gets super fragile, so the seed can just effortlessly snap off in a gust of wind or if a bird gives it a tiny tug. It's this beautiful balancing act, where the tree holds on for dear life while the seed develops, but then preps to instantly let go the second it's ready. You can literally test this maturity by feeling how easily the structure gives way. But there's a catch. You've got to know exactly where that natural break is actually supposed to happen for your specific target. If the tree is only dispersing the seed itself, that break happens at a spot called the funicle. If the entire fruit is meant to drop, you're checking for that snap at the pedicel. And if the whole cluster, the entire inflorescence, is designed to fall, the detachment happens way down at the base of the peduncle. Knowing your target's specific break-off point, that's what makes you a master detective out there. Now, things look a bit different for dehiscent fruits. Those are the dry fruits that naturally pop open right on the tree to release their seeds. For things like pods, follicles, and capsules, your best indicator is visual. And yeah, even conifer cones, which aren't technically true botanical fruits, follow this exact same rule. The moment you see them visibly start to split or crack open upon drying, that is your undeniable neon-flashing signal that the maturation window has officially arrived. All right, Section 3, color and sensory cues. This is where we really get to use all of our senses. Nature has this incredibly visible signaling system built in. Fresh plant parts? Always green. But as dry fruits mature, they shift from green to brown, giving us a physical cue that they are drying out and getting lighter so the wind can carry them away. Fleshy fruits do the exact opposite. They turn these bright, crazy, conspicuous colors, yellow, red, orange, sometimes even a bright blue. These colors act as a literal advertisement meant to attract birds and animals to come eat them and scatter the seeds. But here's the kicker. You absolutely cannot rely on your eyes alone. Sometimes trees bluff. They might shift to their mature color weeks before the seed inside is actually good to go. That is exactly why squeezing the fruit to check for a soft give, or even tasting the pulp for a sudden shift in sweetness or bitterness, becomes your ultimate backup clue. Trust me, if the fruit looks bright red but it feels like a rock and tastes incredibly bitter, yeah, that seed definitely needs more time. Let's look at Section 4, animal and bird signals. Because guess what? We definitely aren't the only ones out there looking for these color and texture clues. We are constantly caught in a high-stakes race against the forest's natural foragers. The animals and birds, especially those super persistent acrobatic squirrels, have literally evolved over millions of years to know exactly when a fruit is perfectly ripe. Their survival depends on it just as much as ours does. It's kind of funny, actually. Your biggest competitors in the forest, they are also your absolute best informants. You might think you need to totally beat the birds to the punch to get your seeds, but observing a flock of birds aggressively foraging on your target tree is the ultimate green light. Birds usually only go after the seeds when they are fully 100% mature, so if they're feasting, it means it's time for you to drop everything and get to work. Which leads us to section 5. Inside the seed embryo. When the outside clues like color, softness, or even bird activity just aren't giving you total confidence, we've got to look inside to be absolutely sure. This is where we do what I like to call a field autopsy, the cutting test. It is a super simple 3-step process. First, you carefully cut open a sample seed with a sharp knife. Second, you take a magnifying glass and really look at the developing embryo inside. Third, you're checking the texture and color. You want to verify that the hidden embryo has transitioned from that milky, vulnerable fluid into a firm, whitish, life-ready structure. If it's firm and white, you've hit the jackpot. Finally, section 6, why perfect timing matters. So let's tie all this together. The attachment strength, the color changes, the bird signals, the cutting test. Figuring out that perfect collection window isn't just step 1. It is the entire foundation of the whole process. Think about the whole timeline of propagation. If you get the maturation phase wrong, like if you collect immature seeds that end up dying or dead over mature seeds, you've completely lost the game. Every single thing you do after that, the extraction, the careful storage, the sowing, is just entirely wasted effort. So, I'm going to leave you with this thought to ponder. If you miss that super narrow window of seed maturation, the forest isn't going to just pause and wait for you to catch up. It moves right along on its own schedule. In the incredibly precise and totally unforgiving science of seed propagation, perfect timing really isn't just everything, it's the only thing. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep your eyes peeled for those neon signs in the forest, and I'll catch you next time.